The ship's interior was bathed in the dim, cold blue glow of emergency lights as the black ship drifted through the debris field. Engines offline, thrusters inoperable, and hull integrity compromised. It was a miracle they hadn't already been ripped apart, but Captain Wren had a reputation for beating the odds, and the black ship had gained notoriety for it, too. Status report, Wren demanded, his voice level but intense. The officers at the console, Ensign Drake, was pale, power reserves at 18%. Sir, shields are depleted, and the main cannon is offline. Hull breaches in sectors 7 and 8, life support holding, but it's weakening in the lower levels. Wren gritted his teeth. Their attackers have been relentless. The Arak-Thur, a species notorious for their brutal tactics, had ambushed them in the middle of a rescue mission, tearing through allied ships to reach the black ship. Whatever they wanted it badly. We need power to the engines, or we'll be dead in space soon enough. Recommendations. Wren turned to Chief Engineer Zane, who looked equally grim. We could try to siphon what's left of the auxiliary power, Captain, but that would take down life support in non-essential areas. Zane replied. It could buy us some time to get out of the field, but anyone left in those sectors won't make it. Wren glanced at his crew, his fingers tightening around the edge of the console. These people were family, every one of them. They had faced death together more times than he could count, but if they didn't act fast, all of them would be lost, floating lifelessly in a metal coffin. Wren closed his eyes for a brief moment, steadying himself. Do it. Inform all crew to move to critical zones and seal the others. We'll get out of here, or die trying. Zane nodded and began the power rerouting process. All non-essential areas began to go dark, a gradual cascade of blackness rippling through the ship's decks. Wren could hear the faint, disquieting sound of metal groaning under pressure. The black ship was a tough vessel, but this would be a test like none other. Just then, a voice crackled over the calm. Captain, I'm picking up a signal. It's faint, but it's an ally, the Aegis Dawn. They're closing in, but they're still out of range to provide cover. Wren's eyes lit up with renewed determination. That's our way out. Helm, plot a course to intersect with the Aegis Dawn's trajectory. Let's get moving. The black ship groaned as it adjusted course, crawling slowly toward the coordinates. They were almost clear when a bright flash illuminated the viewport. Another Arak, the cruiser, had dropped out of warp. Brace for impact, shouted Wren, as the enemy ship opened fire, lasers tearing through the already weakened hull. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered as explosions rocked the vessel. Wren grabbed onto the console to steady himself as the bridge filled with smoke. Captain, they're trying to board us, shouted Ensign Drake, terror flashing in his eyes. Wren took a deep breath. The Arak-Thur were brutal, but they underestimated humans' resilience. If they wanted a fight, they'd get one. He activated the ship-wide comms. All hands, prepare to repel boarders. This ship is ours, and we're not giving it up without a fight. The crew readied their weapons as the sounds of clanging metal echoed through the ship. The enemy had breached the lower decks, but the black ship's crew was ready, resolute, and unbreakable. As the Arak-Thur boarded, the black ship's crew fought back with every ounce of strength, skill, and determination they had. They might be outnumbered, but they fought like demons, each one determined to protect their home and each other. Above, Wren directed his crew with precise commands, balancing their counterattacks with their path to safety. When the Aegis Dawn finally arrived, cannons blazing and shields raised, Wren knew they had survived once more. The arrival of the Aegis Dawn brought a flicker of hope to the beleaguered crew of the black ship. Massive and heavily armed, the Aegis Dawn came barreling in like a juggernaut, immediately engaging the Arak-Thur cruiser with a barrage of artillery fire. Blue beams and explosive rounds tore through the Arak-Thur hull, forcing their boarding teams to reconsider their assault on the black ship. On the bridge, Captain Wren watched the screens with a fierce satisfaction. He wasn't out of the woods yet, but at least they had a fighting chance now. Zane, can you get the engines back online? Wren asked, his tone commanding yet steady. Zane looked up from his station, his face streaked with sweat and grime. I'll try, Captain. We've redirected power, but the conduits are nearly fried. If we push them any harder, we might blow out half the systems we've got left. Wren nodded, his mind racing. He knew what that meant if the engines failed while they were trying to break away. they'd be sitting ducks. A crash echoed through the ship. As another Arak, the boarding team, breached a lower deck, the ship shuddered violently, and the lights dimmed again. Ren gritted his teeth, knowing the brutal warriors would continue throwing everything they had to take his vessel. "Marines, report," he barked into the comm. A voice crackled through the speakers, punctuated by gunfire. "They've breached Deck 9, Captain. We're holding them, but they've got reinforcements pouring in. We need support." Ren slammed his fist down. He couldn't spare any more men, but he had one last trick up his sleeve. He activated the intercom, broadcasting throughout the ship. "All personnel, this is Captain Ren. I need every available fighter to fall back to Deck 9. We make our stand here. Together, we're not letting them take this ship." On the lower decks, the crew responded with a grim determination. Engineers grabbed makeshift weapons, medics shouldered their rifles, and even the few non-combat personnel prepared to defend their home. They were a ragtag bunch compared to the elite Arak the warriors, but each of them knew that if they fell here, no one would survive. As the last line of defenders gathered in the narrow, dimly lit corridors of Deck 9, the Arak came forward in a brutal wave. Their weapons glowed with an ominous green light, casting eerie shadows on the walls, but the black ship's crew didn't flinch. "Hold the line," shouted Lieutenant Carter, rallying the defenders. "For the captain, for the black ship." The two sides clashed with a ferocity unmatched. Arak, the warriors, cut through the air with razor-sharp blades, while the crew responded with gunfire, wrenches, anything they could wield. Despite their superior technology, the Arak were taken aback by the human resistance. They expected fear. Instead, they found fury. Back on the bridge, Ren clenched his fists as he monitored the unfolding chaos. "We need to pull free," he muttered. "Zane, now or never." "Engines are barely holding, but we'll give it a shot," Zane replied, his voice strained. The engines groaned and sputtered as they powered up. The ship lurched forward, pushing through the debris field, drawing away from the Arak the cruiser and their boarding teams. But the enemy wasn't finished yet. The Arak the cruiser managed to fire a parting shot, tearing into the black ship's hull. The blast reverberated through the ship, sending crew members sprawling, shattering consoles, and igniting fires. Ren was thrown from his chair, barely catching himself before hitting the floor. "Status," he called out, struggling to his feet. Drake shouted back, "Engines are barely functional, but we're clear of the cruiser. Aegis Dawn is covering us." On Deck 9, as the Arak the boarding teams realized their vessel was retreating, their determination faltered. The defenders seized the moment, launching a final counterattack, pushing the aliens back until the last Arak the warrior was forced to retreat or die. The Aegis Dawn swooped in, its guns blazing, pounding the retreating cruiser until it was little more than smoldering debris. The battle was over. As the smoke cleared, Ren allowed himself a small sigh of relief. They had survived, though just barely. He stood tall, his eyes scanning the bridge, meeting the exhausted but determined gazes of his crew. "Good work, everyone. You did yourselves and this ship proud today," he said, his voice rough with emotion. He tapped the intercom once more, speaking to the entire ship. "Today, we reminded the galaxy what it means to cross humanity. Rest up and tend to the wounded, but know this: as long as we stand together, the black ship will never fall." A cheer rose through the comms, a mix of relief, exhaustion, and triumph. They had survived against impossible odds, and each crew member knew this was a victory that would be remembered. The black ship would sail on, and every enemy in the galaxy would know it. Through the quiet reaches of space, her hull scarred and engines sputtering, as she made her way to a nearby Allied station for emergency repairs. The victory against the Arak had been hard-won, and the cost was evident in the haunted faces of the crew. Those who weren't tending to the wounded or repairing critical systems moved quietly, reverent of the fallen. Captain Ren stood on the bridge, surveying the damage report on his console. They had lost 27 crew members in the battle, most of them from the lower decks. Engineering was still working to seal hull breaches, and life support was hanging by a thread in certain sections. But they were alive, and so was the black ship. "Captain," Ensign Drake called softly, stepping forward. "Incoming message from Admiral Harlow on the Aegis Dawn." Ren nodded, straightening up and preparing himself. Admiral Harlow was known for her no-nonsense approach and her stringent adherence to protocol. He tapped a button on the console, and the Admiral's face appeared on the main screen, her sharp eyes taking in the disarray on the bridge. "Captain Wren," she greeted, her tone cool but respectful. "Your actions today were nothing short of remarkable. Few ships could withstand such a concentrated assault from the Arak Thur and survive." Wren dipped his head. "Thank you, Admiral, but it's thanks to the bravery of my crew and your timely intervention that we made it out at all. I don't know how much longer we would have held out if you hadn't arrived." Harlow's expression softened slightly. "I've heard reports of your crew's resilience and bravery, how they fought off the Arak Thur boarding parties with everything they had. That's not just leadership, Captain, that's loyalty." She paused, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "It takes a special kind of captain to inspire that." Wren felt a small flicker of pride, but he kept his expression neutral. "We're a family here, Admiral. We look out for each other." The Admiral nodded, which brings me to my point. "We've received intelligence on why the Arak Thur specifically targeted your ship. It appears they're searching for something or someone." Wren frowned, feeling a chill run down his spine. The Arak Thur hadn't just stumbled upon them in the dark void of space. They'd been hunting them. "What are they after, Admiral?" he asked, his tone grave. Harlow's gaze was piercing. "We're not entirely certain, but intel suggests they're looking for a human, a scientist, who was part of a project that holds great significance, something called Project Gateway." Wren's heart skipped a beat. He'd heard whispers of Project Gateway, a top-secret endeavor rumored to be exploring the farthest reaches of human capability and technology, but no one knew exactly what it entailed, only that it was classified at the highest levels. "Are you suggesting the scientist might be on board the black ship?" Wren asked, his voice steady despite the implications. Harlow inclined her head. "It's possible. Our sources indicate that this scientist may have been trying to keep a low profile, and your ship's recent activities in the outer sectors would have provided an ideal cover. I'm ordering a thorough review of your crew, manifests and passenger logs. We'll need to make contact with everyone who's been on board in the last month." Wren nodded, although he felt uneasy. If there really was a fugitive scientist on board, and the Arak Thur were willing to risk everything to get to them, it would put his entire crew at risk. But if they truly held information that could tip the scales in humanity's favor, then protecting them was paramount. "Understood, Admiral. I'll have my officers begin the review immediately," Wren replied, masking his concern. "Good. We'll rendezvous in 3 days at Station Helios-4. In the meantime, I'd suggest keeping your crew on high alert. The Arak Thur aren't likely to give up just because of a single defeat," Harlow warned. Wren saluted, and the transmission ended. He turned to his officers, who had been listening quietly. They exchanged glances, the weight of the new information sinking in. "Project Gateway, do you think we're really harboring someone connected to that?" asked Lieutenant Carter, her voice a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. Wren shrugged. "We're about to find out, whether we are or not. The Arak Thur believe it, and that means they'll be back, probably with even more firepower than before." Ensign Drake leaned forward, his expression grim. "Captain, if this scientist really is on board, they may be the only reason we were targeted. Wouldn't it make sense to, well, hand them over?" The bridge went silent, the tension thick in the air. Wren considered Drake's question carefully. As a captain, his duty was to protect his crew above all else, but something inside him rebelled at the thought of abandoning a person, possibly one with knowledge vital to humanity, to the mercy of the Arak Thur. "No," Wren said, his voice resolute. "We don't abandon our own. If they're on this ship, they're under our protection, and if that means facing down another Arak Thur fleet, so be it." Drake nodded, his respect for the captain clear in his eyes. "Understood, sir." Wren rose from his seat. "Start the review. We'll check every manifest, every visitor, every temporary assignment. I want to know if there's someone on board who shouldn't be here, and if so, who they are. We'll be ready for whatever comes our way." The bridge crew scattered, their expressions determined. They all knew the risks, but loyalty ran deep on the black ship. Together, they would defend their own no matter the cost. As Wren watched his crew work, he felt a surge of pride. The Arak Thur had underestimated them once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. Hours after the call with Admiral Harlow, Captain Wren paced his quarters, reviewing the preliminary findings from the crew manifest investigation. The black ship's records were meticulously kept. Every crew member, every temporary visitor, every log entry accounted for. But so far, nothing unusual had surfaced. Whoever they were looking for was well hidden. A chime interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Wren said, turning as Lieutenant Carter stepped inside, a file in hand. "We found something," Carter reported, her expression cautious. "It's not definitive, but it's suspicious." Wren gestured for her to continue. Carter handed him the file, pulling up data on the small screen on his desk. "We noticed a pattern of personnel changes in engineering over the past 6 months. Temporary technicians and specialists were assigned to help with various maintenance tasks. One, in particular, has an inconsistent record, a doctor, Elias Voss. He was part of a short-term assignment from the Research and Development Division, but has remained on board long past the scheduled duration." Wren's brow furrowed as he read through the file. Dr. Voss' record appeared unremarkable at first glance. Just another civilian specialist on a temporary contract. But further down, something stood out. There were several gaps in his personal record, including a blank section in his background that was only labeled classified. Level 9. Level 9 clearance, Wren muttered, eyes narrowing. "That's above even my clearance as captain. Why would an engineer need that level of access?" "Exactly what we thought," Carter replied. "We've interviewed a few people who worked alongside him. Apparently, Dr. Voss kept to himself, didn't socialize, and seemed nervous, like he was hiding something." Wren clenched his jaw. If this man was part of Project Gateway, he might very well be the reason the Arakh had attacked. And if he was hiding, he might not even trust the crew he'd been living among. "Where is Dr. Voss now?" Wren asked. "Deck 4, in one of the temporary quarters," Carter replied. "We post a guard outside just in case. He doesn't know we're onto him yet, but he may suspect something." Wren considered his options. He had to approach this carefully. If Voss really was connected to Project Gateway, then interrogating him could be risky. But if he was willing to cooperate, maybe they could get answers and potentially an advantage against the Arakh. "Let's go," Wren said, rising. "I want to speak to him myself." Moments later, Wren and Carter stood outside Dr. Voss' quarters. The guard gave a curt nod, stepping aside as Wren keyed in his override code. The door slid open with a faint hiss. Inside, Dr. Elias Voss was sitting at a small desk, his face illuminated by the glow of his terminal. He looked up, startled, his thin frame tense as he saw the captain and lieutenant enter. "Captain Wren, Lieutenant," he said, standing up, his hands trembling slightly. Is there something I can help you with?" Wren studied the man carefully. Voss looked like he hadn't slept in days. His face was pale, and there were dark circles under his eyes. This was a man under immense stress, though whether from fear or guilt, Wren couldn't be sure. "Dr. Voss," Wren said, keeping his tone calm but firm, "we need to talk. It's come to our attention that the Arakh are after someone aboard this ship, specifically, someone connected to Project Gateway. Does that mean anything to you?" Voss' face went pale, his eyes widening. He swallowed hard, glancing at the door as if considering an escape, but he quickly realized there was no way out. "Yes, I'm aware of Project Gateway," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper, "but I didn't think they'd find me out here. I thought I was safe." Wren nodded, signaling Carter to lock the door behind them. He took a step closer to Voss, his gaze unyielding. "Safe from whom, Dr. Voss? The Arakh, or someone else?" Voss hesitated, wringing his hands as he struggled to find the words. "Both," he admitted finally. "I was part of a research team, working on something the Arakh would do anything to obtain. We were exploring trans-dimensional fields, looking for ways to access, well, places that defy conventional physics. We called it Gateway because it could theoretically connect us to other realms, other dimensions." Wren exchanged a look with Carter. Trans-dimensional research, no wonder this was top secret. If the Arakh got their hands on that kind of technology, humanity would be at a severe disadvantage. "Dr. Voss, why are you here?" Wren asked, cutting straight to the point. "Why hide on a military vessel?" Voss took a deep breath, his eyes darting nervously. I was sent to deactivate the project's main systems and destroy the research before it fell into enemy hands. But I knew that Arakthur were already closing in. They had spies within our ranks, and once they knew what we were working on, I had no choice. I falsified my records and took a temporary assignment on your ship, hoping the black ship would be too far off the radar for them to track me. Ren frowned. And yet, they found you. Voss shook his head, almost desperate. They won't stop, Captain. They know Project Gateway could give them an edge, beyond anything they've ever had. With Gateway tech, they could pierce our defenses, infiltrate anywhere undetected, even bypass space itself. Humanity would be defenseless. Ren felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. This was bigger than he'd anticipated. If Project Gateway really was capable of everything Voss described, humanity's survival depended on keeping it out of enemy hands. So, what's the plan now, Doctor? Ren asked. You know they'll keep coming for you and us. If you stay here, this ship and everyone on it will be a target. Voss hesitated, his eyes full of fear and guilt. I have a failsafe, but it's risky. There's a device I managed to bring aboard in a classified case in engineering. If I can activate it, it will send a destructive pulse through the remnants of Gateway technology I carry with me, rendering it useless. Ren frowned. And the risk? If it backfires, it could take out half the ship, Voss admitted, looking down. But it's the only way to ensure that Arakthur don't get anything. The captain's jaw clenched. It was a brutal choice, but one he had to make if they were to protect humanity.